Assalamualaikum to Prof. Safrizal and also my friends. My name is Rabiatul Ilya binti Jarimi. My team members is Kashmini binti Aziz, Nur Fadila and Wei Yingten. So me and my team we're going to present about surrealism and abstract expressionism. So here's the tables of content. The first one, we're going to explain it to you or present it to you about the introduction of surrealism art movement. The second one is about surrealism artists, which is Reni Magritte, Salvador Dali, and Raymond. Number three, we're going to present it to you about introductions of abstract expressionism art movement. And the fourth one, we're going to present it to you about abstract examples of the artists. Next is the introduction of surrealism. As you can see here, there's the pictures of one of the example or one of the artwork from a Reni Magritte, which is called Golchando. So the Golchando is an oil painting on canvas by Belgium Surrealism, which is a Reni Magritte. So he was painted in 1953. It is usually housed at the Manil Collection in Houston, Texas. So the next one is about the introduction of a surrealism. So surrealism was founded by the poet André Breton in Paris in 1924. Surrealism was an artistic and literary movement. So surrealism's goal was to elaborate thought, language, and human experience from the obsessive boundaries of rationalism. So Breton had studied medicine and psychiatry and was well versed in the psychoanalytic writings. So not every surrealist choose to create such abstract work. An artist like Dali and the Belgian painter Reni Magritte created the hyper-realities of a dreamlike vision that are windows into a strategy or strange world beyond the walking reality. So here's some of the briefly explaining about the introduction. It was proposed that the Enlightenment the influences of a 17th and 18th century intellectual movement that championed reason and individualism. It was also had to suppress the superior qualities of the irritation and unconscious mind. He was also particularly interested in the idea that the unconscious mind, which produced dreams, was at the source of the artistic creativity. A devoted Mark X, which is a Briton, also intended that surrealism to be a revolutionary movement capable of unlacing the minds of the masses from the rational orders of society. But how can they achieve these liberations of the human mind? So this dining rationalism and literary realism and the powerfully influences or influenced by the psychoanalysis. So the surrealists believe that the rational mind represents the power of the imagination, which is weighing it down with tables. So the next one is about the icons of surrealism. You can see here there's 8 of the well-known artists for the surrealism, which is André Breton, Joan Miro, Salvador Dali, Reni Magritte, Y. Vestangue, Frida Kahlo, Max Ernst, and Merit Oppenheim. So here's the most famous quotes from the Reni Magritte. So he said that everything we see hides another thing. We always want to see what is hidden by what we see, but it is impossible because humans hide their secrets too well. So the next one is the artwork from the Reni Magritte, which is the treacheries of image. So here's the characteristics of Surrealism in Magritta's artwork. You can see here the image of the pipe. There's a word. Um, um, I can pronounce it as Sesi and it says Pas Uni pipe. So the characteristic of Surrealism in a Magritta's artwork that I can share it to you is there's a highlight the gap between the language and also the meaning. So the pipe there, for instance, is no more an actual pipe. Then a picture of a pipe can be smoked. And Rene Magritta also loved the word games. And he was also determined to prove that the painting and the poetry were on an equal footing. And his statement is taken to mean that the painting itself is not a pipe. It is merely a pipe of the image of a pipe. So I'm going to briefly explain it about the artwork. As you can see, this painting shows a pipe, and underneath it there is a French sentence explaining that this is not a pipe. You may ask, what the hell is going on here? What is all about? Like, you're showing the pipe, but there's also words telling you that this is not a pipe. So what is going on there? So he was also determined to prove that the painting and the poetry were an equal footing despite the surrealist constant fluenting on the preeminence of the written word. Magritta also explained it is quite simple. Who would dare pretend that the representations of a pipe is a pipe? Who could possibly smoke the pipe in my painting? No one. So therefore, it is not a pipe. The painting is sometimes given an examples of meta message, which is the word is not the thing, and the map is not the territory. And Magritta likely borrowed the pipe motif from the Le Corbusier's book, which is a Venice Uni architecture in 1923, since he was admirers of the architect and the painter. But he may also have been inspired by the comical sign that he know in an art gallery, which read "Ceci and acid pass the art." That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nur Fadila, and now I will continue the presentations of Surrealist art movement with another two artists, which is Salvador Dali and Man Ray. So Salvador Dali once said, "Don't bother about being modern. Unfortunately, it is the only thing that whatever you do, you cannot avoid," which is I kind of agree with what he said. So we move on to the next slide. So there were two styles or methods that distinguish Surrealist painting, such as artists like Salvador Dali, Tangoy, and Rene Magritte painted in a hyper-realistic style in which objects were depicted in crisp detail and with the illusion of three-dimensionality, they emphasizing their dreamlike quality. So the color in this work was often either saturated, such as Salvador Dali approach, or monochromatic, such as Tangoy approach. Both choices convey a dream state. So several surrealists also rely heavily on automatism and automatic writing as a way to tap into the unconscious mind. So the hour that I choose is The Persistence of Memory, produced in 1931. It's a surrealist painting by Salvador Dali. So there are few characteristics in this painting, characteristic of surrealism that you can see. So the first one is the surrealist perceptions of camembert cheese melting in the sun. So Dali used a symbolic approach in his painting where he using the melting cheese to convey or to give message about the passing time. So the second characteristic is the distinction between hard and soft object highlight Dali's desire to flip reality. So as we all know, time is abstract. We cannot see time. Time is like soft, we cannot see it. But in this painting, Salvador Dali used clock, but painted in a melting state to represent that time is past and is melt over time. So this characteristic opposites their usual inherent properties and unreality. So it shows that Dali want to flip the reality of the time itself and also the cheese. So the third characteristic is the organic process of putrefactions and decay with which Dali held unshakable fascination. So in this painting, we can see that Dali have this fascination toward decay process, towards process that we not normally pay attention to. So the fourth characteristic is the melting flash at the painting center resembles Dali's as reflections of the artist's immortality amongst the rocky cliff. So it's been said that flash in the middle of the painting resembles Dali and it reflects the immortality of the artist itself. So it's become very personal and very like one's dream. It's not someone else's dream. It's actually about Dali's dreams or Dali's personal preference or about Dali's life. So in this painting, as you can see that Dali used saturated color as I mentioned before. So the next one is artist called Man Ray. So Man Ray is one of the surrealist artists as well, such as like Salvador Dali. So he once says that the streets are full of admirable craftsmen, but so few practical dreamers. So the artwork that I choose from Man Ray is actually a surrealist photograph entitled English Violin and produced in 1924. So Violin de Increase, also known as English Violin, is one of the best known images in modern art. To create this work, Man Ray took a photograph of his favorite models named Kiki and made her pose resemble a painting by Ingres. If I'm not mistaken, Ingres is one of the Romanticism artists. So Man Ray, subsequently painted two F symbol copied from the body of a violin onto the print before rephotographing it. This is a powerful example of post-production manipulation being used to create a surrealist effect in photograph. So post-production manipulation is one of the characteristics of surrealist photograph. So Man Ray's manipulation gives the works a number of layers of meaning. By re-photographing the print, Man Ray elide the original image with his manipulation of it, resulting in the woman's body being inseparable from the violin-like figuration on it. So this confuses the viewers to understand the images. It's made the viewers question, are those black marks painted or tattooed directly onto her skin, or we in fact actually looking at a woman with a hole in her back, like the body of the violin. So these confusions are that from the viewers pointed to the inherent of instability of the photography images so often explored by the surrealist photograph. So as you can see that surrealist photograph love to produce an artwork or photograph that make the viewers or the audience confused. What is actually the reality? Are those a real tattoo, or are those a real hole of the F symbol on the female's body? So one of art historian named David Bate also argues that this image is a key example of the surrealist disruption of photographic issue of mimesis. So if you do not know what is mimesis mean, mimesis is actually a term in arts that used to represent, instead of saying that the artist copied a certain artwork, but the artist actually represent. So this disruption of photography issues of represent and the signifier and the signified. So this signifying plane or the photograph itself has been disrupted. So no longer purely mimetic. The photograph confused the usual state and the convention of the photographic image with respect to the reality. It's introduced fantasy because, as we know, photography is usually captured the real object. We captured the real thing that we saw in front of our eyes. So it's like copying the reality, but now series introduce a distractions element that from a photograph you can also get a fantasy out of it. So these two artists is very significant in surrealism art movement, such as in photograph and painting. So that is all from me and Ilya about surrealism art movement. Now we'll move on to the next movement, which is abstract expressionism. Thank you.
Salam sejahtera, Doctor. My name is Win Teng, and I will present about abstract expressionism. Abstract expressionism was never an idea for the movement, which developed in New York in the 1940s and 1950s. It was somehow meant to encompass not only the work of painters who fill their canvases with fields of color and abstract forms, but also those who attack their canvases with a vigorous gestural expressionism. Still, abstract expressionism has become the most accepted term for a group of artists who held much in common. All were committed to art as expression of the self, born out of profound emotions and universal terms, and most were shaped by the legacy of Surrealism, a movement that they translated into a new style fitted to the post-war mood of anxiety and trauma. In their success, these New York painters robbed Paris of its mantle as leader of modern art and set the stage of American dominance of the international artwork. And now I will present some artworks that done in abstract expressionism. The first one will be Autumn Rhythm number 30, that done in 1950 and done by Jackson Pollock. The piece is exemplary of Pollock's famous drip works, in which paint was poured, splattered, and applied by the artist in an extremely physical fashion from above to a canvas which lay on the ground. This process of expressing an internal emotional turbulence through gesture, line, texture, and composition represented a breakthrough for Pollock in his career and helped put the New York School of Painters on the map. These paintings became the impetus of critic Rosenberg's coining of the term action painting, and this unlikely combination of chance and control became tantamount to abstract expression evolution. The next one will be Chief, that done in 1950 and done by Franz Klein. Franz Klein started his career in figuration and was known to project large images of his drawings on the wall to use for his drawings. One day he blew an image up to large, resulting in only a fraction of it appearing in bold, thick black strokes. He was so taken by the abstraction that he was inspired to start painting them. The pieces, although entirely unrecognizable as to their original subject, still seem to reverberate with an energy that connected from believably to their titles. The pieces, Klein's work was also noted for its energetic palette for bold black and white strokes. He made a note to always paint the white rather than relying on the canvas to take out on that colors roll. Chief was the name of the locomotive Klein remembered from his childhood, and it's possible to read the image as a sensory reminiscence of its power, sound, and steaming engine. Some also believe that the artist's obsession with black was connected to his childhood that spent in a coal mining community that dominated by heavy industry. And the third artwork will be QB Ford, that done in 1963 and done by David Smith. Cubist forged by David Smith is one of the series of sculptures in stainless steel that epitomize his mature career as an artist. It is an abstract composition of geometric figures, squares and rectangles in a vertical arrangement and intended to stand out of doors like a sentinel or a totem. Although greater than life size, it nevertheless has the anatomical proportions of a human with legs, torso and head rendered through geometry. And while it is static, there's a quality of anticipated movement to be found in its broken silhouette. The figure is asymmetrical and implies that a shift in space could be anticipated. That's all for me today, and I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
My name is Kasmini, and I will introduce for the fourth artist, that was Bernard Newman. He was born on 29 January 1905 in New York and also died on 4 July 1917, was also in New York, and he was an American painter, and one of her motivation work for the art movement. This movement is freeing ourselves of the obstacle of an outmoded and antiquated legend, means freeing ourselves from the impediment of memory, association, nostalgia, legend, and myths that have been the device of Western European painting. And one of his artwork that I picked with the title were Heroku Sablin, that was produced on 1950, and this artwork was translated as Man, Heroic and Sublime, with the size of 95 inches plus 213 inches, and this painting was also one of his largest painting that he's produced on that time. In completing this artwork, he already produced many other experiment artwork at the same time. In this artwork, we see a vast field of dark, punctuated twice with vertical lines that Newman joined zip. He believed that this abbreviated signature motif could communicate qualities of humanity which found a church in ancient arts. He also intended audience to view his painting from a close vantage point, allowing the color to fully surround them. Hence, he was considered to be color-filled painter. Although this artwork was important to the movement for its scale and simplicity, it was this relationship between painting and viewer that was most notable, and that reflection of the self of the painting as the subject reflected on the viewer was wholly new category of experience, similar philosophy of a stripped down experience between painting and onlooker, to be seen later in the work of the minimalist movement. He was also an American painter. He was born on 29 April 1904 at the Rotterdam, Netherlands, and died on 19 March 1997 at East Hampton, New York. This artwork is one of William's most renowned works and a depiction of his abstract expressionist style. In it, we see a multitude of outlines formed that are abstraction of family shape, right on the periphery of representation, like the fish, shore, birds, eyes, and teeth. It is because he put everything he felt at the same time when painting this artwork. After this frenzied pile-up of imaginary, de Kooning would then, with signature choice and deliberation, remove, cut, and add pen until he unearthed what he wanted. It's the end result. This artwork successfully presents a true excavation of the artist's mind and movement in the moment. That's why de Kooning remains as one of the most seminal gestural action painters who work often with broad brushstrokes and in light pastel palettes. Helen Frankenthaler. She was an American painter born on 12 December 1928 at New York and died on 27 December 211 at Durham, Connecticut. This painting reflects the artist's departure from traditional medium and surface and the onset of his signature technique. Rather than treating paint as a layer made to sit on top of the canvas, she thinned oil, of which she later switched to acrylic with super thin to the consider of watercolor. She would then place large swathes of unprinted canvas onto the floor and thoroughly a highly physical dance of pouring, dripping, sponging, rolling and mopping will apply the liquid washer. The effect was one of the staining, is the paint will completely sink into the canvas, creating an integrated and transparent effect. This process allowed for both control and spontaneity. And by the way, the title of this artwork is Mountain and Sea, produced on 1952. Thank you. If you have any question, just list the question on the forum and we will answer it later. Thank you very much.